Every so often, an accident comes along that really hits home for those of us who've spent time in the cockpit, not just because of what happened, but because of who it happened to. On October 17, 2025, a Piper Aztec, tail number November 2345 Romeo, went down in Montana's rugged Bob Marshall wilderness, killing all three aboard pilot Mark Anderson and his two daughters, Lainey and Ellie, from Huntsville, Alabama. This wasn't a case of inexperience. Mark had years of flying behind him, and Lainey was a certified flight instructor. When an experienced pilot flying a proven twin like the Aztec goes down, it naturally makes us ask what went wrong. The NTSB hasn't yet released its preliminary report, but we can still examine what's known so far to see if we can learn anything from this. The aircraft was a Piper PA-23-250 Aztec, built in 1981 and registered to Blue Wave Air LLC in Huntsville. The Aztec's been a workhorse for decades, rugged, stable, and powerful, often used by owner pilots who want the redundancy of two engines for family or business flying. On the afternoon of October 17th, the aircraft reportedly departed from Billings, Montana, heading west toward the Seeley Lake or Polson area. The weather wasn't extreme, but that part of Montana is mountainous, isolated, and known for sudden changes in wind and visibility. Around 4:30 p.m. local time, the aircraft disappeared from radar. Search crews, including local volunteers and state aeronautics teams, began looking for it that evening. It wasn't until the next morning that a volunteer search aircraft spotted wreckage in a steep, forested drainage near Youngs Creek, deep inside the Bob Marshall wilderness. There were no survivors. Local authorities, the Powell County Sheriff's Office, confirmed the identities of the three on board, and later turned the investigation over to the FAA and NTSB. As of this video, we don't yet know if there was a mayday call, mechanical issue, or weather complication before the crash. But what we do know is that this wasn't an inexperienced crew in a marginal airplane. This was a qualified pilot with a CFI daughter flying a capable twin, and they went down in daylight in known terrain. For those of us who've been flying long enough, that fact alone makes you pause. Because if it can happen to a pilot who knows what he's doing, it's a reminder that the sky doesn't hand out exceptions. Let's talk about the airplane itself, because that's key to understanding what challenges might have been at play. The Piper Aztec is one of those legendary light twins from the golden age of piston general aviation. Introduced in the late 1950s and produced through the early 80s, it was known for being tough, roomy, and fairly forgiving, but is still a complex aircraft that demands respect. The Aztec typically mounts two Lycoming IO 540 engines, each producing about 250 horsepower. It's got a solid climb rate, decent range, and strong short field performance. But as with any light twin, the real test comes when one of those engines stops producing power. At that point, the airplane's performance and controllability depend entirely on pilot skill and immediate correct action. Now, the Aztec has a reputation for being better than most in engine-out scenarios. Its low VMC and benign handling make it more manageable than, say, a beach travel air or an early Baron. But even then, in mountainous terrain, at high density altitude, and possibly loaded with 3 adults, the single engine climb rate can be marginal. In many cases, you're not climbing, you're just slowing your descent. That's an important point, because this crash happened in mountain country, where terrain clearance and escape routes are limited. A single engine failure, or even a partial power loss, can quickly become unrecoverable if you can't out-climb the rising ground. And let's not overlook the age factor. This was a 1981 airframe more than 40 years old. Even with meticulous maintenance, older systems mean more potential for failure. Fuel selectors, magnetos, vacuum pumps, propeller, governors, you name it. A small mechanical issue in a newer aircraft might be survivable. In older twins, those problems can escalate faster than you can troubleshoot. There's also the human workload to consider. Flying a twin into mountain terrain isn't a set and forget situation. You're managing manifold pressures, props, mixture, cowl flaps, fuel transfers, and navigation, all while staying alert for terrain and weather shifts. Add family in the cabin, maybe some conversation or small distractions, and suddenly your mental bandwidth shrinks just when you might need it most. So when we combine these factors, a vintage, twin, high terrain, possibly heavy load, and an experienced but single pilot operation, we can begin to see the layers of risk that might have stacked up. It's not about any one bad decision. It's about how thin the margin can become when everything has to go exactly right and one small thing doesn't. When we look at this accident from a pilot's perspective, there are several possibilities worth examining, not as conclusions but as discussion points. Every one of these scenarios has shown up in past Aztec and light twin accidents, especially in rugged or high elevation terrain. First, there's the engine failure or power loss scenario. It's the one we all train for, but few of us actually experience outside of a simulator or a well-controlled practice session. In a twin, the moment one engine fails, the airplane starts yawing hard toward the dead side. You need to push in that rudder instinctively, maintain airspeed above VMC, and feather the dead prop, all while keeping your spatial orientation in mountainous terrain. In training, it's procedural. In real life, it's chaos, and every second counts. If the Aztec lost an engine while flying low or in a confined valley, the pilot may have had no viable escape route. Even if everything was done correctly, a heavy twin on one engine at 6,000 or 7,000 feet of density altitude doesn't have much climb performance left. You might just be buying a few more seconds before terrain meets you. Then there's weather and terrain interaction. Montana's wilderness terrain can be deceptive calm skies at 5,000 feet, but violent downdrafts or rotor turbulence just 1,000 feet higher. If the aircraft hit unexpected mountain wave or sink, even both engines at full power might not have been enough to maintain altitude. A partial loss of visibility, or even just sun glare during that late afternoon hour, could have further limited situational awareness. A third possibility involves fuel or system mismanagement. The Aztec has a complex fuel system, multiple tanks, cross feeds, selectors, and on older models, misconfigurations have caused numerous fuel starvation events. A simple selector error or failure to balance tanks could lead to one engine quitting, leaving the pilot suddenly troubleshooting instead of flying the airplane. Finally, there's the maintenance factor. With aircraft of this age, components like magnetos, fuel pumps, and prop governors can fail unpredictably if not perfectly maintained. Even a momentary loss of power or an asymmetric thrust condition could have put the airplane in an unrecoverable attitude at low altitude. Now again, none of this is confirmed, and we should be very careful not to overstep the evidence. But when experienced pilots look at this kind of crash, we naturally evaluate it through the lens of risk stacking. Usually, it's never one big failure, it's 2 or 3 smaller ones lining up in just the wrong way. When we look at this accident, it's clear that experience alone isn't always enough. George Whitman was no novice. He knew his bonanza and had years in the air. But even seasoned pilots can be caught when performance, terrain, and conditions all start working against them. At 8,000 feet over mountain terrain, every knot of airspeed and every horsepower counts. Witnesses mentioned the engine sputtering, maybe partial power loss, maybe mixture or fuel issues. Whatever it was, that's one of the hardest scenarios in flying, when you're not gliding, but you're not climbing either. The instinct is to troubleshoot, to get it home. But in those moments, time is brutally short. Flight data suggests the plane slowed and may have stalled before impact. That's a reminder we all need. Airspeed is life, especially near the edges of performance or in high-density altitude conditions. And beyond the technical side, there's a human side. George and Lisa weren't thrill seekers, they were aviators, doing what they loved. For many of us, that's what makes it hit so hard, because we've all been in a cockpit, making those same judgment calls under pressure. The NTSB will dig into the details, engine, fuel, controls, but we can already take away one powerful lesson. Never assume you'll have time. If something feels wrong, fly the airplane first and commit early. If you found this update helpful, hit subscribe. We break down accidents like this to learn from them, not to sensationalize. And if you've flown bonanzas or mountain routes yourself, share your insight in the comments. Fly safe, fly smart, and keep learning.